the other things I wanted to talk about is when we talk about building this trust relationship with our kids and stuff, like when there is a breach, you know, when there is something that goes on, whether tech related or not, in terms of rebuilding that relationship and rebuilding that trust, I think in my generation, most of my friends, it was sort of everything got shut down. Like everything, if we had done something wrong as teens and stuff, like all of our privileges got shut down, and that wasn't just my parents, it was just everybody, you know. And how would you say that there's the best way of, you know, navigating that? Like, because teens will stretch and test boundaries and sometimes step over that line, whatever family line you've set.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, I think also they make actual mistakes.
yeah.
And so very important to set this up right from the beginning, particularly with technology, but also with everything else, that, you know, you're there to guide them, and you will be making decisions about their privileges based on the skills that they show and the trust that they you place in them. In other words, they have to demonstrate by their behavior that they're ready to have responsibilities and privileges. And so if they do something that is upsetting to you, or that you think is not using good judgment, or they violate rules and things like that, then they have to kind of step back until you can have trust in them again. And so I think it's very important when you're giving kids technology to kind of talk about the expectations that you have, and to set it up right from the beginning that you're going to be supervising them. That just like anything else that they're doing for the first time, you're not going to give them carte blanche and say goodbye and good luck, you know. And I think an analogy is when they're learning to ride a bicycle. You know, when you take off their training wheels, you're not going to send them to ride their bikes by themselves into town. And when they get their driver's license, you're not going to tell them it's okay to drive by themselves on the highway in a snowstorm, right? You're going to give them little privileges, little at a time. So having said that, I also think it's so important not to use technology as a punishment, as a way, because it's very powerful. And to always have that over their heads makes kids very, very anxious. They really feel, well, once they get technology, they really feel like it's their lifeline, and their lives are just cut off from, you know, the rest of the world when they don't have it. And so that's where I got the title of the book from, because so many teenagers are saying to their parents, anything but my phone, mom, like ground me for the rest of the year, but just don't take away my phone.
Right.
So I think you have to be, I always think that a consequence should really fit the crime. And so if your kid does something that violates your trust, then you need to have them demonstrate the skill and the trust in them. How am I trying to say that? You have to, they have to demonstrate that they're trustworthy again for you to be able to give them that particular skill. But don't take away everything in their lives. No.
Yeah, because I think that phones to them is, I mean, it's sort of like phones to us at this point, right? Not like what they were to us when we were younger. I mean, I don't think when did I have a smartphone? I was older, you know, and the first time I got a cell phone, I was older. I was like in my 20s. So that idea of losing contact, like completely being cut off is, you know, it's not just with friends anymore, like the way when we were younger, we would get, you know, grounded. I think it's everything. It's all of your entertainment and all of your interests and, you know, your access to sharing your opinion, even on broad forums like Twitter and things like that. It's that idea of being, you know, your link to the world.
Exactly. Some teens get their news from their cell phones. Some get comfort and support in various groups. Some of them learn things on YouTube. I have a lot of teens in my practice who have learned phenomenal things on YouTube, that they've become little entrepreneurs. So, you know, that's when technology is used appropriately. And I think you don't want to cut that off you know?
Yeah.
So I think that maybe they have more supervised use of technology where they're allowed to do certain things, but not others.
Yeah. I think that's important to note. Like for my son in particular, who is very interested in tech, when he was younger, you know, there was this idea of like, should I limit hours and things like that? And I think it goes forward now where his interests are more sophisticated in what he's doing and how he's creating on there. And so limiting that time, it's not only a punishment, it's also like a detriment to him. You know, like it's
Yeah,
actually making his quality
yeah,
of life less. It's not teaching him, like it wouldn't really teach him, you know, whatever you did wrong was wrong. It would really make his life less good, you know, to take
exactly.
that creative outlet away. So that is a good point. Another thing that comes up a lot nowadays is privacy for kids. Not only
Mm,
like for their sharing online, but for us sharing them online as parents. And as my kids have gotten older, the older ones feature less and less on my posts and things, partly because homeschooling is more Instagram worthy when kids are small and playing with colorful things, but also because I generally will ask, like, is this an okay picture to share? Is it okay if I share this? And that's something I've always done just because I have always done that. But um, as they've gotten older, it used to always be like, yes, can I see? Awesome. Why aren't you also sharing this other meaningless picture? But now it's more like, no, you know, like I don't like that. Whatever it is that they don't want shared, they don't want it. And I don't really go into it, but they're just like, no, don't do that. You know, even if it was a moment that I was proud of or something that I think is, you know, something awesome, they just, for whatever reason, whether it's their hair in that picture or whether it's their, you know, their handwriting or whatever it is, they just don't want it shared. So I think that as they get older, it's interesting to see like how they want to curate their digital self also.
yeah, it's so respectful of you to do that. And that's really what it is. It's really respecting that they are their own individual people and that you don't claim ownership over what they want to show to the world.
Mm.
I think that's the ultimate respect.
Yeah, it's interesting though to see them come into themselves that way. To now they're
Yeah.
realizing, like the older ones who are preteens, that this is for other people to see, and that whether they know these people or not, they still have this selfhood to honor. You know, whether it's strangers or not.
And you know, as they get older, they also, especially in the preteen years, they start to be a little self-conscious, and you know, they're probably at their most awkward phase. And you know, imagine if somebody were posting things about you without your permission. You know, they're people, and they maybe are kids, but they're people, and it doesn't feel good when someone has that kind of control over you or what your image. So you're really giving them autonomy and you're empowering them, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're cognizant of a digital image in a way that I never was when I started going on like Facebook and stuff. If you look at our old Facebook posts, those Facebook memories that pop up where Facebook would let you say like what you were doing at the moment, and there would be like random things that I said, and I'm like, why did I think that was of interest to anyone? And who was I? Like saying like, you know, I am eating this thing or I am studying this thing or this idea that they have. I think it's very healthy because in the world going forward, their digital image is a real thing. You know, I don't think we were as cognizant of that at the onset of things like social media. So
We weren't, absolutely not, because it's something that's evolved over time. And so even though, you know, as you said before, when we first started out, we're learning social media at the same time as our kids, but I think they're light years ahead of us.
yes.
They are they're digital natives. They're comfortable with things. You know, today when I was having all those technological problems, you know, I was flustered and I was thinking to myself, my kids who were much older, you know, even them, they wouldn't be flustered, you know, and 10-year-olds would be like totally figuring it out. And
Right.
a lot of times now when I do my work digitally. I do work on telehealth. And if I run into any kind of problems, it's wonderful because the teenagers that I'm working with are like, oh, I can help you. And they're so proud of the fact
And
that,
they're so empowered. Yeah.
and, they, and I love it, because even if I'm not like 100% needing their help, I'm like, oh, please, because they feel so good about that. So it's both a blessing and a curse because if I had young children now, I know that I would not be in a position to be the expert, right? The kids are much more comfortable. They know how to get around a lot of things. That's why from my interviews for this book, oh my gosh, the stories that I heard, I just cannot in good conscience recommend parental controls or anything like that. And there's no substitute for being honest and having honest conversations with your kids because they know how to get around everything. They are just so clever.
Yeah. And I think that not only are they clever about it, I think that parental controls aren't geared for how the internet operates. Like they truly operate on a very like, if we were trying to hide things that were perfectly labeled type of way. Whereas none of that is accurate when it comes to YouTube or social media or any of these hosting gaming platforms or anything like that. No one's out there saying like, this video is only for this age or whatever. No one's clicking that warning bar in general, right? I mean, the stuff you're worried about on the internet is not clearly marked to be like picked up by
For
control. So
I'm talking, you're absolutely right. I'm talking about the things that are like, I don't want my kids on the phone at this, hour.
yeah.
And, so, you set those parameters, but they know how to get around that. There are 30 or 40 ways that they can get around that, and they're even like 8 and 9-year-olds figure that out. It's extraordinary. I mean, as adults,
I had whitelisted sites on some of my kids' iPads, like the only websites they could go to. And then I noticed one of the youngest was on a site that I hadn't whitelisted. And I was like, how's your iPad doing this? And she was like, oh, I just asked my brother. And he like put it on there for me. And I was like, okay, I'm glad.
Or they create a new, they create a new ID,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
or they reset the time. There are all kinds of things that they do.
Yeah. They can navigate settings like with the greatest.
Oh, yeah.
Like they know exactly what all those things mean. So
yeah, in a second.
In terms of, we were talking about having this cohesive sort of family approach to things, but when you do have kids of different ages, and so like, let's say you have like a 15-year-old who has certain privileges with, their phone, let's say they have a phone, and now you have like a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, like how do you just set limits in terms of saying like, well, so is at this age and has the responsibility and maturity to handle this, and when you get there you will, because that's how we've done it for simple things like who can ride around the neighborhood by themselves and stuff on their bike. So that's my plan, but does that function?
I agree with that. I wouldn't necessarily tie it only to age. I would say when you're a little older and you have these skills and you're ready to do it, because you don't want to get too wedded to a certain age, because what happens if, like the older kids in the family sometimes mature more, or vice versa, can go either way. But, if your kid is at that age and you think, uh-oh, why did I say that? Because now we're here, but he's not really here, then, you want to be able to have this fudge factor. So we'll talk about it when you're older. You need to have these skills. You need to be a little more mature till we're all comfortable with that,
That's like that. I like that script, because I ran into that problem exactly with what I was talking about with the bike, but the biking around the neighborhood on your own. I was like, I don't know about you, but okay. Now I've said it so many times. But, and another thing that I want to talk about is when we do run into these snafus with our kids and like are having these push and pulls and moments where we feel like we're not connecting, like whatever we're saying is either being said in the wrong way or being received in the wrong way, and vice versa. Like when you do feel like your child is just not hearing you, like when does it become something where you want to like seek out, like a professional to like be a third party and to help out? Because I mean, I think that we all have really bad instances and like things happening, but is there like a tipping point or something we should be looking out for when, you know, particularly with preteens and teenagers, where there's something to worry about, where someone else can help more than we could ourselves?
Sometimes it's good just to get a different set of eyes, you know, a different set of eyes that's not only knowledgeable about kids that age, because you know you only have one child that age, and a professional has seen many kids, of course, of that age. And also, I think it's good to get an unbiased kind of opinion sometimes. So if you're very anxious about something, if one of your kids is going through something, and let's say it's something that triggers something for you, and you feel like maybe there's something about what's getting triggered inside of you that's making it hard for you to discuss that with your child, that you're communicating some sort of anxiety or mistrust or something, then oftentimes it's good just for you too to run something by a professional. You know, you don't necessarily have to take your child. The other thing I would say to you is that I'm sure you and you know all mothers try to be very attuned to your child. And so I think that on a very deep level, we know when something is off. You know, sometimes there are visible signs where they're suddenly less accessible to us, or less communicative, or you're seeing changes in their behavior and their personality, in their eating or sleeping habits, or their work and school, or homeschool, you know, their work wherever they're doing it. And then you have to say to yourself, okay, maybe there's just something that I'm not able to reach here. Let's see if we can find out what it is. But I think it's important when you do that, always to frame it as not like your child is having a problem and your child is the problem child, because that's how they're going to hear it, but rather, I feel like there's something that we need to take care of here that I need to understand better. So I'm going to ask for some help. And that is such a good thing to model for them, that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think also, you know, my eldest has ADHD. And so learning about that has taught me so much about like my own, you know, reactions to things and stuff like that. And so the vocab surrounding talking to my kid about, you know, how we can best help ourselves and how we can best like come back into ourselves in moments of stress and struggle has been, I mean, so helpful for how I live, but also how I parent my other kids who are more neurotypical. And
Right.
I think that's really been helpful for approaching this teenage stuff, because we've talked so much about emotional like upset and how it's okay, and how we always say like feelings and fights are the weather but love is the sky, you know, like they'll come and they'll go, like they will definitely happen, like you're not going to have this perfect thing. And I definitely grew up thinking that I was sort of on the road headed towards like adult perfection somehow, like somehow when I was 24 everything would like magically fall into place and I would just be this well-regulated happy individual, you know. So I don't want them to grow up with that same sense of like I expect like perfection, or I expect sort of like this continuous refinement. Like I think it's really like a day-to-day thing, and it is okay to have really bad moments and really bad days or weeks or whatever, but you should feel like you are loved and supported enough to ask for help when you need it, and to go get a hug and to go ask for those things even when you've been your worst self. You know, that's what, for me, that's what I always want them to feel like. You know, even on your worst day, like we are all
Yes,
your fan, you know, like that, like
that's right.
that's okay.
They
So
don't feel like they have to be living up to your expectations to get your love and support, that they just have your love and support, even especially on their worst days.
yeah, especially on our worst days, right? I feel like a lot of times, you know, we expect so much of ourselves, and that goes on to how much we expect of our kids. But, you know, it's okay to have bad days. Like, I find that my kids are so much more compassionate than I was to myself at that age, because we've talked about having bad days so much, you know, and that, like, we as adults have told them, like, you know, I'm just having a really hard moment. Like, just give me a sec or whatever. And I think that teaches them that, okay, I don't have to like become this like pristine thing, you know, that never has a bad day or never has an angry outburst or any of these things. You know, you just have to keep being your own best friend in a way, you know?
Well, you're also normalizing a range of human emotions. You know, you're
Yeah.
also telling that, you know, being a good kid doesn't mean that you're happy all the time. You
Right.
know, they're entitled to their feelings, and they're entitled to work with their feelings and express their true selves. So they're being authentic. They don't feel the need to hide things. And basically, you are setting the groundwork for emotional resiliency.
Yeah. And I think admitting mistakes too has been helpful. Like all of us, you know, adults and kids
Huge,
included. That it's okay to say, like, I did that wrong. Like, I messed that up. I shouldn't have done it this way. And that, you know,
especially.
there is an after you admit that that all went badly and not the way you would have wanted. I think it's good to see that, you know, everything still continues afterwards. Like, our family's still here and everything's intact and we still see you, you know, for all that you are. So that, I mean, I really, really appreciated all the emphasis you put on like that evolution, you know, that everybody's evolving together, not only in the digital landscape as that changes, but in our interior world, you know, that we are
Mhm.
separate entities, but like how we interact will evolve. And that was really, you know, you had wonderful anecdotes and stuff all about that. So I really appreciated that in every chapter you kind of came back to that, you know, that respect of like individuals within the family unit. So
I think it's so important.
yeah, it was very affirmative to hear that stuff, you know. And so finally, like my real last question is just in nowadays, you know, obviously like parenting issues change as the world changes around us and as the emphasis on what it is to be a good mom or dad changes. But like, what do you see in your practice as like coming up most often? Like, what are the kinds of issues that you see most often?
So I'm seeing that there's a lot of parental anxiety. And there is a lot to be anxious about right now. You know, studies that were done even after I turned my book in for publication show that adults, and particularly parents are more anxious than non-parent adults, have never been more anxious. And there's so many things that they're anxious about in the world. You know, I don't need to name them. I think we can all think about them, right? There's a lot going on right now. The world is a scary place. And I think what happens is that that anxiety gets channeled right to kids, to parenting, because we don't want to think about World War III. We don't want to think about economics all the time, you know. And so we have our interactions with our kids, and a lot of the anxiety is getting channeled into them. And it's really, to me, tragic in a way, because I'm not seeing parents really appreciate these moments with kids. You know, the bad moments as well as the good moments. I don't see parents as much being in the moment. I see them kind of stressing and thinking about things they should have done differently in the past. And I see them making anxious projections about the future. And it's easy to do as a parent. My gosh, you know, it's so easy to think, well, what I'm going through right now with my kid is never going to go away. It's never going to get better. And, you know, sometimes they do get worse before they get better. But I think the most important gift that we can give ourselves really as parents, and also give our kids, is to try as much as we can to be in the moment, and really just take pleasure with the ability to be with our kids and to enjoy them and to relish these moments we have with them, and not worry so much about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week, and not dwell on what we think we did wrong or they did wrong, you know, 2 weeks ago. So if that's one message that I could give parents, I think that's what it would be.
Yeah, it's harder done than
Uh, I know.
said, but yeah, I think that's really important. Um, I can definitely say that, you know, world events and just existential angst about, you know, where the world is going. A lot of my friends talk about how that affects, you know, their day to day and just obviously our overall mood, spills
Yes.
over onto how we interact with our kids. But yeah,
And that brings
good advice.
one more thing. I think it's really important for parents to prioritize self-care. I think we all have to right now. And I think parents especially, because, unless we kind of take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care of our kids. And there was just an article in the paper the other day about burnout among parents being so high. And if you feel like you just have nothing left in you, that your tank is empty, that's awful, So take care of yourself, limit your stress. Don't watch the news 24/7. Don't look at your phone, the latest news coming in on your phone, the alerts. Really take care of yourself and make sure that you're at a place where you're calm and you're able to be present for yourself and your kids.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of world news and stuff, it's funny when you said that, because we watch CNN 10 with our kids in the morning for homeschool. And CNN 10, if you haven't seen it, is like a kids news like little blurb thing that they do. But I love it because they talk about current events, like they'll talk about, Ukraine and things like that. But they also always include really interesting things that are happening, like new inventions and new projects, like global environmental projects that people are starting and stuff. And I love that it's like this compressed news show that doesn't hide from, what's going on in the world, but also talks about all the great things that are going on that I feel like adult news doesn't address nearly as much. So
Not at all.
I have really enjoyed transitioning my news consumption in a visual format to CNN 10, because I'm like, this is an amazing invention. Like, we are gathering trash in the ocean or whatever. And it's like this mental boost. And I think I strongly recommend it to everyone who hasn't tried it.
You're telling me about it. I am thrilled. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. You should tell for your grandkids, it'll be good, like, in 10 years or something. But, and then the last thing, I forgot about my question. That was my end thing. It's just, if you could just do an elevator pitch to parents, right, of like little kids, and then going on up, like, what would you say to them? So like, if you're talking about like, preschoolers, like, what would your elevator pitch be? Like, what is your words of wisdom, like your quote on a coaster kind of thing?
This too shall pass.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then like elementary age, like when people are.
Oh, I think this is what I would say for all ages.
Okay. This too shall pass. That's so funny, because that's what my mom used to say to me.
Yeah, but it's really true. Things evolve, things change, and not to feel stuck, not to feel stuck, and not to feel. I think I would want to instill a sense of hope, and looking forward to the future, and enjoying the moment you have now, but not feeling that you're just stuck. So yeah.
Yeah, everything, nothing's guaranteed but change, right?
Right, exactly. Go.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good one to hang your hat on. So I have so enjoyed this conversation.
Me
with you.
too.
So again, you guys, if you haven't heard of Dr. Roni Cohen-Sandler, then you should definitely go and check out her new book, Anything But My Phone, Mom. And I looked you up on YouTube, and there are some fascinating older interviews too. Like, I saw your interview with Diane Sawyer, and it was, and that one you can see your daughter also when she was 15.
Yes.
So that was really fun to watch. And
yes, it's a long time ago.
But it was fun. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see, like you as a mom of a teen back then. So
yeah.
In any case, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to read your book and to talk to you. And I mean, I would love to talk to you some more if you ever come out with another book, or just in general, since we, bonded over our tech difficulties.
Yes, we did. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this so much.
Okay. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining in. And this will be put into my videos here, and I'm going to try to make it into a YouTube video as well. So if you didn't catch it here, tell your friends. and they can catch it there. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.